no two soaps are created equal. That's because each ingredient added to an all-natural soap does a specific job. But how do you find the exact soap you or your family needs without breaking the bank? Unless you have the ear of a soap maker who owes you a favor or two, your best bet is to learn how to make soap yourself. Yes, working with lye can be dangerous, and learning all the rules and purchasing all the different supplies, it can be intimidating. But when it all boils down to it, it's worth the effort. Working with lye is no more dangerous than mowing your lawn in the South during snake season. I know for all you Southerners out there, you know what I'm talking about. You're not going to be out there in flip-flops when you've got copperheads nearby or moccasins. Oh no, you're going to wear the proper shoes. And in this case, when dealing with lye, you wear safety glasses, long sleeves, and, rubber gloves. To overcome your phobia, you first need to better understand what it is you actually fear. Now, the reason lye is dangerous is because it can cause severe burns if it comes into contact with your skin. No, it's not an acid. It quite simply is a chemical reaction. You see, lye absorbs fats and oils upon contact. So when a drop of lye touches your skin cells, it immediately sucks up all the natural hydration in the skin, leaving a burn. This process in soap making is called saponification. It's the chemical reaction of the lye absorbing the fats and oils to create a substance that cleans by altering the pH, hence where you get the word soap. It's simply because the lye and fats have gone through that chemical reaction, saponification. Not enough lye will leave a soap that dissolves rapidly and is mushy from excess fats and oils not being saponified. And, let's not even get into the kind of soap scum rings that's going to leave in your bathtub. Ooh, gross. But too much lye will leave your skin so clean it feels dry and cracked. So there's a balance there. The same way you would treat a boiling pot of water is how you should really treat a container of lye. Simple as that. You don't want to be around pets or small children who can knock into you while working. You moms out there, you've got toddlers or little ones. You know what I'm talking about, how you're going to take a step back and your child loves to they're like phantoms. They just appear. You don't hear them, you don't see them, and they're right behind you. And you take that step back and whatever you have in your hands, you're like, you either drop it or it spills. That's what I mean, common sense. Leave the kids and pets out of the room just to make sure that you don't have an accident in that regard. But that's it in a nutshell. That explains the danger of it all. As my children like to quote to me, if you remember those old G.I. Joe commercials from the 1980s? Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe! Now that you've made up your mind to brave through your fears, how much is it going to cost up front to start making soap? Well, to make one of the simplest types of cold processed soap, you're going to need these main ingredients. And 3 of them are main ingredients, but you can technically add a 4th, which would be essential oils. And that's totally your call. If you don't want to add essential oils to it, fine, no biggie. But the 3 main ingredients to actually make soap would be distilled water, and a gallon of that at a grocery store is about 89 cents. You're going to need 100% lye. At the local hardware store here, we can get 16 ounces for $3.49. If you can't find it at a local hardware store, they do sell it online. But again, the price would be a little bit more expensive because of that. But your local everyday hardware store. And then the 3rd most important ingredient would be your coconut oil. I can get mine on Amazon for $20 for a gallon. Yeah, a gallon of coconut oil. That's a great price. It doesn't have to be all fancy. Actually, I think that my favorite coconut oil to use in cleaning products and in my soaps it's in the popcorn section. Yeah, it's the snappy popcorn coconut oil. It doesn't smell like coconuts. It's white. It melts perfectly. There's nothing added to it. It's great. It's just not the fancy bells and whistles kind. So the cheaper, the better. Because once it goes through that saponification process, any extra bells and whistles that you have, it's organic and, extra refined, it's nil and void. It's soap. Just good old plain soap. The pH has been changed. So again, those are the main ingredients: lye, water, coconut oil, and if you want, the essential oils. Now for your tools, you're going to need a silicone spatula. If you don't have one, that's $1 at the Dollar Tree. A 2-cup plastic measuring pitcher. Again, if you don't have one, you can pick one of those up for $1 at the Dollar Tree. A gallon mixing bowl. Now here's, if you recycle your ice cream buckets, if you have one, that's free. Use your ice cream buckets. We've always got buckets laying around the house between, slop buckets and chicken feed buckets and watering buckets and you name it. We use those gallon buckets everywhere and anywhere. So it makes the perfect mixing bowl for my soaps. Another one that you're going to need is a small bowl. Again, recycle a sour cream container or a whipped cream container, anything like that you could recycle. It just needs to be a small container. Next would be rubber dishwashing gloves. You can get those at the Dollar Tree, or if you are one of the lucky few who ended up, if you still have some from your stash during the pandemic, you've got your plastic disposable gloves, hey, more power to you. Go ahead and use those. You just need something to protect your hands, but if not, pick up a pair at the Dollar Tree for $1. Now, the more expensive tools that you're going to be using would be a digital scale. Prices vary on this, but a decent one can be found around $15. The most important thing is you want it to be accurate, but it needs to be able to show the 100ths. So, if you're doing ounces, you need it to be like 0.00. You need the 100ths to show on there. So a digital scale, a must. Measurements are so crucial when making soaps. So don't be stingy on it and don't buy an old-fashioned one. It needs to be digital. The next big one is a stick blender. Typically, any time of year you can find one around $15, but if it's around the holidays, good grief. I think I saw one at Kohl's with the doorbuster sale, the mail-in rebate, and it had something else on it. It was like $2.50. Yeah, like $2.50 for a stick blender. I don't think you're going to get any cheaper than that, but goodness, that's a deal. But again, if it's not Christmas season, any other time, it's going to be around $15. The better the stick blender, if you're really going in all out with this and you are committed to it, you want a better one, then yeah, I would say go ahead and invest maybe $30 for a good stick blender. The critical thing is you don't want those, you don't want the motor to burn out on it, and you want it to be easy to clean. So those are kind of like the crucial aspects. The biggest one, and I kind of think people would say it's a splurge, but to me, it was like the best money ever invested. It was for a digital infrared thermometer that I got for $20. I'm telling you, this thing saves money in the long run. It just saves me time, and time is money for me. So a digital thermometer, because at any given time when you're making soaps, you're going to be testing your temperature of your lye solution and your oils anywhere from, like 4 to 8 times. And if you had just a regular sugar thermometer, you would have to keep cleaning it. Every time you put it in one solution and get the temperature reading, you have to clean it off, and then you put it in the other solution, and you have to keep doing that back and forth. That's just a real big pain. So to me, it's worth the investment. You get accurate, quick readings using the digital infrared. And then, of course, last but not least is your soap mold. This can be anywhere from free up to, $10, $20, depending on the size and how fancy you want to go. But a soap mold, it can be, an old used USPS medium flat rate box or any shaped container you want that can be lined with parchment paper. People like to use Pringles cans or PVC pipes to make round soaps. They're really cute. But that's possible too. Anything under the sun, the sky's the limit, and it can be free. Yeah, seriously, free. All you need is a container and parchment paper, and you are good to go. Very important to remember that whatever you use for making soap cannot be used for other purposes. So probably just looking through the list of needed supplies, you could cross off a bunch of things because you already have them inside your pantry or kitchen cabinets. The amounts and prices that I've mentioned, it's going to be enough to make, I'd say, 2.5 batches of soap. If we're going to use the following recipe to formulate these ingredients that I've said, the $20 gallon of coconut oil, the lye, and the water, it's enough to make the 2.5 batches. And that comes out to a total of 35 5-ounce bars of soap. And a bar of all-natural soap costs around $5 to $7 at the store or supermarket. It could be even more, but we'll just say $5 to $7. So if you bought that same amount of soap at the store, you would spend $175 to $245 just for bars of soap. And altogether, your ingredients and tools, it costs you less than $100. So now, to put all the pieces together and start building your soap formula. At this point, go get a piece of paper and pencil, and you're going to need to write some things down. I will try to repeat the numbers so that you have a chance of recording them and follow step by step. But it's a complicated process. You can rewind and listen to it again, but get your paper and pencil ready, because here we go. Step 1. Do the math calculations to determine the volume and oils needed for your batch of soap. Now remember, I said you can use any container you want as long as it can be lined with parchment, but you've got to figure out how much soap is going to fit into that container. So if you have a square or rectangle, how you find the volume, you're going to multiply width times length times height times 0.4. All right, so width times length times height times 0.4. That is for a square or rectangle. If it's a cylinder, the equation there is going to be pi, or 3.14, times radius times height times 0.4. Again, for a cylinder, it's pi, 3.14, times radius times height times 0.4. Now, using an old UPS or USPS medium flat rate box as a mold with dimensions of 11 times 8.5 times 5.5 times 0.4, I'm going to change the 5.5 inch height down to 2 inches because I don't want the soap to be that tall. So the final equation we're going to use for this example is going to be 11 by 8.5 by 2 by 0.4, which gives us a final volume of 74.8 ounces. Again, the total volume we're looking for is 74.8. Step 2. Take this number and plug it into an online calculator to get the correct amount of each oil. I typically use the brambleberry.com Lye calculator, but I've also tried out others that have a better list of usable ingredients. For instance, Brambleberry doesn't have lard listed as one of the fats and oils. It's kind of a bummer since, I like to make old-fashioned lard soap since we have our own pigs and, you use everything you can. However, the Brambleberry site, it's one of the simplest to use. So for this example, this illustration, I'm going to go ahead and use the Brambleberry site, which again, it's www.brambleberry.com. And you're going to look for their Lye calculator. Scroll towards the bottom of that page and you're going to answer these questions. It's going to ask you the type. At that question, you're going to select solid. It's going to be a solid soap, not liquid. Then it says, please select ounces, grams, percentage. Click percentage. Weight of oils. We don't know the weight. That's why we need to use this. So we're just going to put in the total volume, 74.8 ounces. That gives us a starting point. Because we have yet to figure out the actual amount of the coconut oil and how much lye and water we need. We don't know. Superfatting level. Just click none. It doesn't matter at this point because I'm going to show you how to calculate your own later, and I'll explain what in the world is superfatting. So that'll come later. So just click none. It doesn't matter. After clicking next, you get to decide on the percentage value of each of the oils you would be using. Because we're doing the most basic recipe, it's not going to have to be broken down into different kinds of oils to use. Instead, just enter 100 in the coconut oil section, and they're all alphabetized. So find the one for coconut oil and just enter 100 in that empty space. Then click next at the bottom of the page. Side note, typically you would want to break a recipe down into percentages like 33% olive oil, 33% coconut oil, 15% shea butter, 15% sunflower oil, 4% castor oil. All of that to add 100%. But a typical bar of soap is going to contain certain elements that do certain things. But you can do more research on that. I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of details. That's something you need to do on your own if you are serious about getting into making your own soaps. I just want to be able to show you how to know or give you the resources and the tools so that you can, from that point, use your information to take that next step and make all the soaps yourself. But anyhow, back onto the brambleberry, you'll see that it gives you a total batch yield of 117.11 ounces, which, good grief, that's about double the volume of the mold. Click at the bottom where it says resize batch, and then you're going to just guesstimate what you think the oil amount will be. You can keep resizing the batch until you get the total batch yield down to 74.8. In this case, the final oil weight would be 48 ounces, which gives you a total batch yield of 75.65 ounces. Now, scroll up to the section that says where your oil amounts are and write down those numbers next to each ingredient. So for us, it's just coconut oil. So you'd write coconut oil, 48 ounces. You write that down. Now, look at the amount of liquid and lye and write those numbers down as well. Here it's going to tell you the lye is 8.54 ounces and the liquid is 19.11 ounces. Step 3. This is where the math comes in. Double check the lye amount using a saponification chart and multiplying the amount of oil ounces by its amount of lye needed. Now, I've attached a PDF of my favorite NaOH chart that I've had the most success using down below so you can see all the values needed to calculate the lye for a bar of soap. Now, FYI, in case you search the internet for a chart, keep in mind KOH charts used to make liquid soaps, they have different values. The reason doing your own calculations is so important is because, for example, the first time I made a recipe of soap that I had found, I plugged in all the information on the Brambleberry website and, I followed it to a T. The problem is that my soap didn't turn out and I was so aggravated because it's like, good grief, I just wasted all those ingredients and the time and, why didn't this work? Drove me bananas. Well, through my research, I stumbled across a book, and in it, she had the full list of saponification chart and was explaining, how everything works and blah, blah, blah. But as I was looking at that chart, I matched it up to what the recipe was that Brambleberry had told me, and I did the multiplications on there. I multiplied the saponification chart from the book that was listed with my oils, and it was different. Now, I did that for the entire recipe. I went through and redid the calculations, and when I made the recipe again, it worked. I didn't have a failure. It turned out perfect. And that lesson it taught me was that online lye calculators, they're not always right. And there are so many different variations of saponification charts out there online that it's insane. So again, that's why I've listed my favorite one that I have had the most success with. I have not had any failed attempts when I've done my calculations. My soaps turn out correctly. Again, some people are like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's a 10th or a 100th of a decimal off. That adds up in my mind, so I want to stick with the one that I've had success with, and that's what this is that I've posted below. But on this chart, she uses 0.190 for coconut oil. That means that for every ounce of coconut oil, you're going to use 0.190 ounces of lye. So you multiply that out. 0.190 times 48 equals 9.12. Now, that's telling us we're using 9.12 ounces of lye. You can already see it differs from the online calculator, which had it as 8.54. Oh, wow, it's already changed. So step 4 would be where we start the superfatting process. All right, superfatting. This simply means it's a term used when you allow a certain percentage of the fats and oils to not be absorbed by the lye during saponification. So again, it's allowing a percentage of oils and fats to not be absorbed. Means that they're going to remain in fat molecule form. They're not saponifying. It's not turning into soap. This is another big way in which making your own soap can be customized. You can control the moisturizing effect of the final product simply by adjusting the superfatting level. This will also affect the amount of bubbles or suds your soap will produce. Too much and the soap becomes slimy and bubbles are inhibited. Not enough and the soap leaves the skin, feeling dry because it cleans off all the natural oils in the skin and doesn't replace them in any way. So superfatting is crucial. You take the final amount of lye needed, in our case 9.12, and multiply it by the percentage you choose. Now, majority of recipes are usually superfatted at 5%, but those that are high in coconut oil, which that's what this recipe is, it's straight out coconut oil, you want it to increase it to a minimum of 15% because it's so high in coconut oil. So we're going to multiply 9.12, which was our lye amount, by 0.15, our superfatting percentage, and that equals 1.368. Now subtract that amount, the 1.368, from the total lye, and you end up with 7.752. You round to the nearest hundredth, and you end up with 7.75 ounces. This is the needed amount of lye for your batch of soap. With the accurate lye amount, adjust your liquid measurements to match, and the liquid to lye ratio is 2:1. So for this recipe, you will need 15.5 ounces of liquid. So final recipe, you have 7.75 ounces lye, 15.5 ounces distilled water, and 48 ounces coconut oil for a total weight of 71.25. Because of the change in lye and water amounts, the total weight went below the 74 that we were kind of shooting for, right? We were working toward that earlier, but you can either leave it at this weight or you can go back and readjust your oil amounts. Just remember, if you change one amount, the oil amounts, you have to redo the math on all the steps. You can't just change one and not change the rest. So be very careful of that when you go back to tweak things. Always, always, always double check your math. Always. But yay, you just formulated your first batch of soap. Oh, more power to you. I know it's an exciting thing. It's so amazing knowing you now have the know-how, the ability, the knowledge to take any fats and oils and any form you want and to make your soap. This is it. Simple. This is it. But now that you've done the math, you might want to walk away and let your brain relax for a bit. Or if you're daring enough, let's jump right into it, okay? You've got your formula, you've got your recipe written down. So step 5 would be mixing the lye solution. All right. Set out your supplies in a well-ventilated area. If you've got a fan on, a window open, turn on your vent hood, just make sure that there's air circulating. Put on your safety gear and cover your work area with either a trash bag or newspapers to protect the surface you're working on. Then using a digital scale, place your 2-cup measuring pitcher on the scale, set to measure in ounces, and press the tare button so you zero it out with the pitcher on there. Measure out the needed amount of, emphasis here, cold distilled water. What temperature was the water? Cold. You want it to be cold. Cold distilled water. Measure it out, then set it aside. Place your empty small bowl on the scale and press tare again to zero it out. Measure out the needed amount of lye, being very careful. Don't spill the granules, okay? They burn if they come into contact with skin, so you don't want those scattering around, all right? Just be careful. If you're in a well-ventilated area, slowly pour a little lye at a time into the water, mixing with your spatula. Now, big emphasis here. Never pour water into the lye. Always, you must pour the lye into the water. Again, lye into water, never the opposite way. Why? Because you don't want a volcanic explosion going off in your house. Yes, it will bubble up like a volcano if you add water to lye. So again, always add lye to cold water. And the simple explanation of why I say cold water is because as soon as you add that lye to the liquid, it starts heating up fast. Our goal is to keep it within a certain temperature amount. So as soon as you have finished mixing it all up and it's crystal clear, there's no more white specks floating around, you put the pitcher with the spatula in it, just leave it in the pitcher, put it in your refrigerator. Because that baby is going to heat up really, really fast. And you don't want it to take forever in order to make your soap. So you want it to cool off as much as possible. So the cold water tremendously helps keep that temperature controlled. And then putting it in the refrigerator. Now, Step 6, measuring your oils. Place your empty gallon ice cream container on the scale and measure out your coconut oil. You do the same thing, hit tare, so it zeroes it out, then start measuring your oils. You can put your oils in the bucket in the microwave for 15 to 20 second bursts while it melts, stirring in between. Or if you don't like using microwave to melt things, if you have a heat-safe bowl, that's what I'm trying to say, a heat-safe bowl that you can use for making oils, make a hot water bath and let that melt the oils as you stir it on the stove. Just whichever you do, you slowly melt them down and then check it with your thermometer to make sure it's at the right temperature. So using the digital thermometer, test your oil and then test the lye. You are looking for a temperature of both between 120 and 140 degrees with a difference of 10 degrees allowed between both. So for instance, if your oils are at 120, you're looking for your lye solution to be at 130 or lower, between 120 and 130, not higher than that. No more than a 10-degree difference of temperature, and you want them both to be between 120 and 140. That's the window. So again, like I said at the beginning, you're checking temperatures back and forth again and again and again, and sometimes you have to do it several times till you get them within there. And all of that has to go back to how fast or how slow the temperatures will affect when you're mixing them together, how quickly they'll start to solidify. The hotter your oils are, the faster they reach trace. The cooler your oils are, the slower. So 120 to 140, that's your window. Using your stick blender, you're gonna pour your lye solution into your oils and then use the stick blender and you're gonna burp it for just a few seconds. And if you don't know what that means, burping it means you just kind of pump the stick blender up and down a few times to get rid of any air bubbles, air pockets that are in there. And then slowly blend the mixture in 15-second bursts, letting the blender rest in between. And you can use it to just kind of swirl the mixture around and then turn it on. The reason for that is you do not want your stick blender to burn out. Especially if you have a cheaper model, it will do that. You can't keep running it nonstop. So 15-second bursts, stir, turn it back on, just let it rest in between. Now, what does trace mean? Trace is when you can dribble some of the mixture on the top of the batter and it holds its shape. Now, when you reach a light trace, that is when at this point, you would want to add any essential oils if you were adding them to your soap. If not, it doesn't matter. But if you were adding essential oils, you do it after you reach light trace. Then you're going to blend again for another 15 seconds, make sure it's all incorporated in, and you should reach a medium trace. It's not really a pudding consistency or a cake batter, but it starts to thicken up. And when you dribble it, you're going to see it. It's going to sit on the top. As soon as you reach that point, get ready. You need to have your soap molds ready to go. You want to get that soap batter into the soap mold as quickly as possible. It will begin to firm up as it cools. So scrape the sides of the container, clean them, and then shake or tap your mold to smooth the batter into the corners and evenly across the top. A little tip here that I've learned is if you are using a silicone mold that doesn't have a solid wood frame with it, it's like individual molds, put it on an upside down cookie tray so you can lay your mold on top of that. And after you pour everything, when you go to tap it, you pick up the tray and tap the tray, not the mold. Because a silicone mold that doesn't have structure to it, it would just be an absolute mess. However, if we're using a box here for our mold, you can just pick up the extra sides, the flaps, and use that as handles and tap it down. But that gets rid of any air bubbles. It shakes it down, levels it. And then at that point, Step 9 is going to be what we call gel phase. Now, non-milk soaps need to go through a gel phase to create a consistent color and texture throughout the soap. And this can be achieved by placing your mold on a heating pad set to low, covered with thick towels, or you can wrap several thick towels and blankets around it and set it aside. Just remember that if it is on the heating pad, check on your soap after it's been sitting for an hour to ensure it doesn't overheat. Soap that gets too hot can, again, bubble up like another volcano because it's the heat aspect of it. Better to have it be a little too cool than to be too hot. And in gel phase, it's not going to affect the outcome of the soap. It's for a cosmetic appearance. I don't know if you've ever seen soap. It's got like a circle in the center of it. It's discolored and it'll be a perfect shape, perfect circle. But that simply means that the soap was not heated consistently through the entire bar. And that's why it has that discoloration to it. It doesn't mean that the soap is bad. It's just not, it's not perfect. It's not pretty. So again, that is gel phase. And we do not do that with milk soaps, but that's a whole nother topic right there. Just know non-milk soaps go through a gel phase. They heat up. Step 10 would be unmolding and curing. Your soaps will be ready to unmold after 24 to 48 hours. At this time, you would cut your bars into the desired shape after you unmold them. Bars should be kept on a shelf to cure for 4 to 6 weeks to allow the excess liquid to evaporate and harden. If you've got it on a solid wood shelf or plastic shelf that doesn't have slats in it, you're going to have to rotate the bars so that each side has access to the air so that it can just evaporate correctly. But, soaps are safe to use after unmolding since the entire saponification process is finished. Contrary to a lot of soapers out there who, they're like the doomsday people. They'll say it's not safe to use soap until after 4 to 6 weeks, and you need to wear gloves when you unmold your soaps because it's so dangerous. The pH is high. There is technically no scientific proof to back up that claim. There's just not. The curing process is there to harden the bars, which will in turn make them last longer during use. It has nothing to do with the pH. The pH has already been chemically changed during saponification, which means by the time the bar hardens within that 48-hour window, it's done. It is soap. Nothing else changes in it. It's soap. It's done what it's supposed to do. So it is completely safe to put it in your shower. You can use it fresh, but here's a tip. If you don't let it cure, it's just going to dissolve faster. And you hate to feel like you're flushing money down the drain doing that. The time and the effort that it takes and the finances you put into making soap, you don't want to waste your money. So let it cure. That way, when you use your soap after it has done that curing and it's nice and hard, that thing's going to last you months versus if you use it straight out of the mold, it's only going to last you weeks. It's because that extra moisture in there makes it kind of soft, and when you mix it with water, it softens even faster. When it's a hard bar of soap and you let it sit and dry in between uses, it keeps rehardening, and you have like a rock solid piece of soap that is not turning into a pile of mush. That's why it lasts, and that's where you get your money's worth out of it. In closing, I just wanted to remind you that this recipe was one of the simplest and least expensive ones you can make by using only 3 ingredients. This type of soap is not favored for washing with because it lacks the other oils that are more hydrating. However, it's still a great plain soap that does an amazing job at cleaning. If you lower the superfatting level down to 0, you then have an amazing plant-based laundry soap that can be shaved and added to other ingredients for a dry laundry powder, or you can take those shavings and melt them down and make a liquid detergent. It's all natural and very effective at removing dirt and stains. Seriously, people, 3 ingredients and it is chemical-free. No junk added, and it does the job. It's amazing. Old-fashioned traditions that have been around for hundreds of years and we have forgotten about. And yet the simple chemistry of it is just mind-boggling. But how well of a job it does at cleaning with so few ingredients, it's mind-boggling to me, really. But now that you know how to formulate a soap recipe and do the calculations, look through your kitchen cabinets and pantry and, just see what oils you have on hand in addition to the coconut oil. Some of the best oils would be, like olive oil, sunflower oil, avocado oil, lard, tallow, sesame seed oil, hemp seed oil, or castor oil. These are all very easy to acquire oils that you can get at the grocery store. You don't have to purchase them from a fancy soap making company or online source. No, they're at your local Kroger or Walmart, for Pete's sake. They're really easy to get a hold of, so don't worry about that. But whatever recipe you find online or in a book that you want to try, always, oh my goodness, I cannot emphasize it enough, but always remember to do the calculations yourself and not just follow what someone else has written down. Typos can happen. I'll admit to that. I've done it to myself. But mistakes can happen. Always double check the numbers. Always. You will be so much happier with your results if you do the work yourself. And you have the knowledge. You have the ability to do that. So I hope this episode was a help to any of you out there looking for ways to save money for yourself and your family by becoming more self-sufficient in the area of soap making. I mean, truly is a blessing when you know how to do it. You can follow along with us on our homesteading journey by subscribing to our YouTube or podcast channels. But in all things, good luck with what you do. Hey, and be proud of yourself. This is a skill that is not very common. So good luck to you on your own journey.